Welcome back to the Logic Dilemma. I'm your host, American Mike, coming to you from the Purple Mountain Majesties, from sea to shining sea, America the Beautiful. This is the show where we discuss current events and how sometimes thinking logically can get in the way of our feelings.
Dislocated worker grants, fancy phrase, which is dimes, all it is there to make sure it helps create jobs for workers involved in the cleanup. Now, this spring is here. The seasons of allergies are upon us. We're on the rise even more.
If you can decipher some of the things that our president said, well, that's good for you, because I can't. I don't know what he says. A lot of people say, oh, you don't listen to the president talk every day. I see this all the time in comments from liberals who love Biden. He talks every day and he's just fine. Well, guess what? I've been pulling content every day of speeches that he gives that are just garbage. Just like what you just listened to. The man writes his own content for this show, which I'm grateful for because I always have something to share with all of you. Again, thank you for joining us. We have a lot to cover today. A lot of really great stuff in the news. O.J. Simpson has died. Now, O.J. Simpson, we all know who he is, especially if you were around in the 90s during the trial. Most people think of him as a murderer. I will say this is a bittersweet moment. Bitter because death is always hard to understand. We don't fully understand it. So it's always hard, especially for the loved ones involved. But sweet, because don't worry, folks, he'll still be able to vote Democrat in November. So there's always that. In fact, he'll probably be able to vote multiple times in November. He'll probably show up on multiple ballots all across the states. I don't know. I don't even know if he voted Democrat. I'm assuming, but why is it that anytime we talk about voter fraud, we talk about dead people dying, we talk about multiple people voting multiple times in states, how come it's always on the Democrat side? Anytime we talk about voter fraud, I always see it on the Democrat side. I never say, oh, well, there's a Republican candidate. There was just a bunch of voter fraud that we have to investigate. It's always on the Democrat side. Why is that? Maybe I'm not paying attention. I don't know. I mean, keep in mind the big one, the 2020 election. That was a hard one to swallow. A lot of people saw it was very visible what happened. You know, we go to bed, the vote count had stopped in multiple states. We go to bed with Donald Trump so far ahead that everyone across the world thought it was a shoo-in. We wake up the next morning. By the time the vote count had started up again, Biden was ahead in these areas. The probability of Biden pulling off that win in 2020 is so low that it's not even worth entertaining. The probability of him receiving that many mail-in ballots to put him up ahead was, well, I remember we're logical on this show, not emotional. This show is about logic, not emotion. So it wasn't impossible that Biden won. We're not going to say it was impossible, but it certainly was improbable. For us to say it was impossible would be not logical. It was possible for Biden to pull off a win. But the probability was very low. But it's always on the Democrat side. Why is that? I guess I can't be, let's be fair. We can't say that for sure. There were some problems around the 2000 election. If you remember Al Gore, he fought that election. He did not want George W. Bush to have won that election. Remember all of the hanging chads. But even though he fought and fought and fought, nobody ever thought of him as a terrorist. Donald Trump fights for investigations as to why Biden came out ahead, and all of a sudden he's a terrorist. In fact, he's on trial right now because they were thinking, well, he's a bad guy. He was trying to overthrow the election. There's some Georgia voter fraud, him trying to get to the governor. And no, the only thing Donald Trump ever did during the 2020 election was he called governors and asked for them to investigate. That was it. He asked for them to investigate. Hey, find my votes. That's what he said to the governor of Georgia. Find my votes. What did Donald Trump mean by that? It meant that it didn't make sense that Biden was winning. So we have to figure out what's going on. All he was asking for was an investigation. That was it. Find my votes. Go investigate it. Donald Trump is the first person to tell you that if the investigations would have happened, and in the investigations, if they turned up that it wouldn't, that there was nothing wrong, he would have conceded just fine. The biggest problem is that people were refusing to investigate. They just wanted to move forward. They didn't want this on their record. So Donald Trump's in court for this. This is the whole Fannie Willis garbage. You remember her? She's the one that they're traveling back and forth to the White House. I mean, how transparent is that? Obviously, it's the Biden administration just trying to take out their political opponent. But they're traveling back and forth to the White House. There's a bunch of love affairs involved. They can't even, her prosecutor and the DA can't even be on the same case because of all the ridiculousness that's transpired. But here we are going to move forward with this case, a case where Donald Trump, the only thing he was asking for was investigations into what had happened. We all want to know what happened. But keep in mind, I say this all the time, the 2020 election, let's just say if, because again, we're logical. It is possible that Biden won. If Biden did cheat, if there were big entities of corporations or big groups of deep state that brought in ballots at night, and these are the conspiracy theories, of course. If that happened, I think it's hilarious because you don't get many of those. You don't get to cheat like that very many times in general elections, because especially for the president of the United States, this is a very important election, and you don't get many of those where you're able to push through a cheat. And to think that you wasted it on two of the dumbest people in politics, Joe Biden and Harris, are you joking? If people actually executed this giant plot to overthrow the election, make sure that Biden wins, you wasted your one shot on Biden. Well, good luck with that, because you don't get many of those. Remember, if the American public feels that their elections are being stolen, they will stand and fight. And the fighting we will win. The American people will win. Now, keep in mind, also Democrats feel like they are the ones losing their democracy. Kamala Harris was in the news from yesterday saying that if on a podcast, obviously all podcasts are stupid except this one. So whatever podcast she was on, I don't even care. This is the only one you need to pay attention to, because this podcast is real, true. We don't lie. We just tell the truth. We tell it like it is. If the Democrats are being stupid, we call them out. If the Republicans are being stupid, we call them out. Unfortunately for the Democrats, we're calling them out way more because, wow. But they're saying this could genuinely be, on this podcast, Harris says, this could genuinely be the last Democratic election in America's history. If Donald Trump wins, that's it for America, folks. That's my Harris laugh. I don't, oh man, I don't understand how she ever got to where she is. I don't see it. But she's in charge of the border. She did a bang up job there. Good job, Harris. But she goes on to say, if Trump wins, she said, I've had it over and over and over again. There's so much at stake in this election. Have you ever heard her say that scene? What does she say? That scene where she said it. Oh, she has said it so many times in almost every speech she's given. Here it is. Listen to this.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been. You know? What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been. Can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been. What we can see, what we believe can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be.
So she goes on and on like this.
Unburdened by who we have been. What can be unburdened by
On and on. Now,
unburdened by where we are right
these are all different speeches.
unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened.
All of these are different.
What can be unburdened by what has been. What could be unburdened by what had been. What
I think I'm starting to get it.
by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what.
See, I think I'm starting to understand it. We're not going to listen to the whole thing. This is like 4 minutes of constant speeches where she's said this. And I think I'm starting to understand it now that I'm listening to it more and more.
Unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what.
See, what can be is that we can make America great again, and we can be unburdened by what has been. And the has been the past 4 years. We can be unburdened by that. I think that's what she's talking about. We can be unburdened by high inflation. We can be unburdened by high gas prices. We can be unburdened by the mess at the border.
What can
We can be unburdened by what has been. What she's talking about is her presidency. I think I'm starting to understand it now.
has been. What can be. What should be unburdened by what has been.
Yep, that's what it is. We are going to be unburdened by what has been, and that is the Biden administration. Enough of that. Again, it goes on for 4 minutes of just different speeches back to back, showing her she has said this hundreds of times. And a lot of people don't really understand how it even applies to what she's talking about. But anyway, I digress because I actually wanted to talk about what she said. If Donald Trump is elected, there will be the end of our democratic process. See, this is what Democrats do. They do it all the time. It's this scare tactic that they always use. If Donald Trump is elected, that's going to be the end of the American people. No, that's not true at all. Donald Trump actually was a very good president. He did some really great things. Our economy was good. Our foreign relations were good. I mean, you really want 4 more years of Biden and Harris? I mean, look at our borders. What? Look how unsafe we are because we've had who knows what passing into the country. Look at our foreign relations. It's terrible. We have wars being fought, which I know wars are always around with multiple presidents. I get it. But wars are being fought. Borders are completely open. And we want 4 more years of that? No, it's ridiculous. So to sit here and say, oh, well, it's going to be the end of the American people if Donald Trump is elected. Oh, okay, Harris. Yeah, we hear you. We hear you. This is what Democrats do. If they start to lose, they start to scare the people. I mean, think climate change. Well, it started out as global warming, but when that wasn't playing out, they have to figure something out to scare people. They say, oh, well, it's climate change. Oh, we're going to have worse storms. Well, those haven't been working out. Oh, we're going to have rising sea levels then. Entire islands are going to be taken out. We're going to have to pull everything back from the shores because we have rising sea levels. Have we had rising sea levels? Not even a tiny minuscule amount. There is no shoreline on any continent in the world that has had to pull structures back off its shores. Not one. Maybe because of a storm, but that's been happening ever since the beginning of the planet. They always point to these islands that are out there in the middle of nowhere where they say, well, this island has structures on it. And they've been taken out because this tiny little island is being overrun because of rising sea levels. Well, what's really happening is tiny little islands are eroding. It's called erosion. Tiny little islands don't have the structure in place, and so they come and go. They have been for thousands of years, millions of years. Water beating on these islands, the little tiny ones will erode and come and go. That's how it works. But no continental coast in the world has had rising sea levels, but they use it. See, Democrats and liberals, they use this to scare you into getting what they want. Remember when we talked about the difference between Democrats and liberals? See, the everyday average liberal American is not a bad person. They want clean energy. They want clean world. They want clean air. All of these are noble things. Where we diverge is with abortion. I don't understand that. Why you have to be able to kill your babies. I don't understand that. I mean, they will go to great lengths to make sure we have to be able to kill our babies. I don't agree with. But for the most part, everyday liberals are pretty normal people. They just want different things than we want as conservatives, which is fine. Not everybody has to be the same. But the everyday average liberal is different than what I call the Washington Democrat. See, the Washington Democrat just plays on your feelings to get what they want, to get money, to get power. They do this constantly, and they are very good at it. And they use liberals as a way to say, this is what we're going to scare you into getting what we want. See, the Washington Democrat doesn't care about you. They just want the numbers. They want the power and they want the money. They'll use any type of scare tactic to scare you into achieving their goals. That's the difference between the liberal, everyday average liberal, which usually I can carry on a very good conversation with and have very good relations with everyday liberal Americans. But it's the Washington Democrats that ruin it. Anyway, back to this. That's what they do. Kamala Harris is trying to scare everybody. They've been doing this from the beginning of time, from the beginning of politics, they've been trying to scare people. Oh, they're going to take away your ability to murder your babies. Okay. I wasn't going to play this, but here's another example of this. There's a United States Senator from Massachusetts. Her name is Elizabeth Warren. She is the one who the late, great Rush Limbaugh used to call Pocahontas. And I love that name for her. She's the one who always touted this great, rich ancestral history of Native American blood in her veins. She's not Native American. She never has been. And the big problem with that is she received grants and kickbacks and things growing up, going to colleges on this idea that she's part Native American. She isn't part Native American. She lied about everything. She just wanted all of the good that comes from being a minority. So she lied about all of that. She talked about this just recently on MSNBC, where our favorite news station. I have to be very careful. Remember, I have to be careful about listening and watching MSNBC because their numbers are so low that there have been many times where I'm the only one that's watching and they send me a gift basket. It's nice, but I don't have room for all the gift baskets being the only one watching their stupid crap. So I have to be really careful about what I watch. Anyway, on MSNBC, Elizabeth Warren, or I am going to take it upon myself to call her Pocahontas. Pocahontas, or Sacagawea, that would be a good one. Pocahontas is better. So Pocahontas says, oh, the Supreme Court took away our abortion rights. Listen to this.
You really want to say to Donald Trump, how dumb do you think the rest of us are? We're not going to let him lie his way out of this. Donald Trump brags and continues to brag to this day about the fact that he put this extremist Supreme Court in place, and all of these folks who stood up and so soberly said to the American people and to the United States Senate, yes, I'm going to follow precedent. And that was all supposed to be code for, I'm not going to fool around with Roe versus Wade. And then the very first opportunity they had, I don't mean the second or third, I mean the first chance they got, they said, oh, you know what? Not anymore. We're just flipping the whole thing over. And for the first time in American history, took away a constitutional right from half the population.
Okay, so she, to her credit, she does sound exactly like a Native American. Jeez. I'm joking. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude, but that is shrill. That is shrill. Anyway, so she says, oh, the first chance the Supreme Court gets, they come in here and they overturn Roe v. Wade. So they no longer we don't have the ability to kill our children anymore. I don't get it. I don't get it. I mean, I know we talked about this in previous podcasts. Go back and listen because it's really good. When you're pro-choice, you're not choosing to kill your baby. You're choosing a consequence of an action that you've already chosen. See, the choice that you made was to create the baby. What you're trying to do is choose your consequence. That actually doesn't work in society. Choosing consequences doesn't always work. Anyway, go listen to that other podcast because it's good. I have to say, I do good podcasts. I am very good. Anyway, so she says, oh, they're going to take away. Oh, we're going to go in here and take away the first time in American history we take away our constitutional right for half of America. Why do they call it that? I mean, this is on network television, on news. And she says that they took away a constitutional right. What makes a constitutional right, might I ask? Well, something that's written into the Constitution. Now, keep in mind, the judicial branch of our federal government doesn't have the ability to make or break constitutional rights. They can only uphold the Constitution. Now, there are laws passed that help us define and clarify the Constitution, and Roe v. Wade was certainly one of those. But since then, science has shown us that it's actually probably not a good idea to be murdering our babies. And so Roe v. Wade was overturned. And it helped us clarify and identify some of the points of the Constitution. But is abortion a constitutional right? No. See, a constitutional right is the right to freedom of speech because it's written into the Constitution. A constitutional right is the right to own firearms because it's written into the Constitution. A constitutional right would be a right to peaceably assemble because it's written into the Constitution. These are constitutional rights. You see, abortion never shows up in the Bill of Rights. The judicial branch, like I said, can't write amendments to the Constitution. It has to be written, ratified in our legislative, not judicial branches of the federal government. So for them to say that abortion was a constitutional right, was it? It certainly wasn't in the Constitution. It isn't now. Our legislative branch never had to pass laws and amendments to make it part of the Constitution. So how is it a constitutional right? Simply put, it's not. The Democrats say this to scare you. It's not a constitutional right for you to be able to murder your children. It's not. It was never written into the Constitution. But they use this to scare you. Again, just like Harris, we're never going to have democracy again, unburdened by what has been. See, they try to scare you into getting what they want. Same thing with Pocahontas. Oh, they took away our constitutional rights. No. They just dropped a law that they were trying to help clarify some of the Constitution, but it wasn't working, so they dropped it. That's it. Abortion, the word abortion, never existed, never has, and never will exist in the Constitution of the United States. So don't call it a constitutional right unless it exists in the Constitution. Oh, they hate that though, don't they? Liberals hate that. They would love to be able to get rid of the actual constitutional right of our ability to bear arms and have guns. They would love that. But they can't, because they can't actually get rid of constitutional rights without passing laws and removing it from our legislative branch, not the judicial. Remember, the judicial branch isn't going to take laws away from the Constitution, and it's not going to add laws to the Constitution. It has to be done through the legislative and then signed off on by our executive branch, the President of the United States. We haven't had changes to the Constitution in a very long time. Very long time. And abortion certainly wasn't one of them. So don't fall for it, people. Don't fall for it. What we need to do is we need to read the Constitution so that you understand it. Read it, understand it, and understand that Roe v. Wade being overturned was not removing constitutional rights. Anyway, trying to scare you into it. It's what they do. It's what they've always done. Well, you remember last week when all the liberals were making fun of Trump? Biden, I guess it was a couple of weeks ago, Biden had a fundraiser, and he raised a whopping $25 million in one fundraiser, and everybody was saying, oh, he has so much more money than Trump for his campaign. So much more money. Now, keep in mind, Democrats have to have more money. It actually costs more to run as a Democrat than it does to run as a Republican. And that is true. That is fact. Because, see, for Democrats, if you want to have a rally where you have thousands of people there, the only way to do that is that you have to pay the people to be there. Not only that, a Democrat has to bus people in for rallies like that. And it costs a lot of money. And this is a well-known fact. Democrats have to pay their supporters. That's how it works. That's why Democrats have to have more money. You will never see a Democrat candidate for anything fill stadiums of people all because they just want to be there. You'll never see that. Now, Trump, on the other hand, he has filled stadiums of people, and he continues to do so. Thousands, tens of thousands of people come out to gather around Trump and hear him speak, and no one's getting paid a thing. The other reason why it costs Democrats so much money is, have you seen all of these around social media? All of these individuals that come on and they're talking to the camera, these influencers that are saying, "Oh, I voted for Trump 2 years in a row, and this is my last. I will never vote for him again. I am all for Biden." This came out in droves a few weeks ago. A lot of influencers saying, "Well, I'm never going to vote for Trump again." Those were all paid actors. Not paid actors. Let me rephrase that. Those were all paid influencers. They're real influencers on social media, but they were paid as much as $500 a piece to post something about no longer wanting to vote for Trump, but wanting to vote for Biden instead. After a lifetime of being a Republican, they actually had a script that they had to follow. This was leaked because someone said they were approached and asked that they would do this, and they asked if they would like to make money with this, and they were paid handsomely for just posting a simple little video that said, "I'm never going to vote for Trump again." Well, that's why, again, Democrats need more money. They have to pay their people. They have to pay their supporters. You can't run a Democrat campaign and a liberal campaign, progressive campaign, without paying your supporters or getting money to your supporters somehow or busing them in or anything like that. Same thing with voting. If you've ever seen bus loads of people coming in for voting, it's always Democrat. You will never see Republicans busing people to the polls because for the most part, Republicans are willing to vote. But Democrats, for some reason, liberals, on average, I'm not saying all of them, of course not. I'm saying on average, most Democrats and liberals have a hard time getting to the polls. So they have to bust them in. So yes, Biden needed to raise money. He raised $25 million in one fundraiser. He was with Barack Hussein Obama, as well as Bill Clinton, ex-presidents. Well, Trump held a fundraiser last week and raised $50 million in one night. $50 million! That's the largest fundraising that has ever taken place in American politics. See, they thought their $25 million for Biden with Barack Hussein Obama and Bill Clinton. They thought that it was a lot of money. $50 million. And keep in mind, Trump's alone. He raised $50 million on his own. He didn't need some ex-president standing up saying, "Oh, hey, let's, vote for Donald Trump." No. He didn't have George W. Bush standing up there supporting him. George W. Bush, who I like. I actually think he was a great president, and I think history will. We've talked about this on the program before, history will show that George W. Bush was one of the best presidents ever in the history of the country. Because, keep in mind, as emotion dies off, facts stay. History stays. And what history is going to tell people is, wow, here's a president that had the highest approval rating than any president ever in the history of this country. Right after 9/11, all the polls were showing that George W. Bush had a 92% approval rating, the highest ever in the history of our country. See, as emotion dies and as generations live on, that's all they're going to have to look back on. And they're going to say, well, George W. Bush, his legacy is the highest approval rating ever known to man. So obviously, we're going to see that he's a great president. And history will show that he's a great president. But he's not standing up and in support for Donald Trump. In fact, he hates Donald Trump. And some of the things that he's been saying, he tries to stay out of it. I think that's smart. But some of the things he's been saying, I feel like he's more likely to vote for Biden now. Still, I think he did a good enough job that it doesn't warrant me actually talking bad about him. But I don't like the way he's been treating Trump. Trump, he could stand with Trump and say, hey, let's do this. Let's get you reelected. But he won't. He refuses because he does not like Trump. Some of it stems from, years ago when Jeb Bush, George W.'s brother, was running for president. Who was the governor of Florida. He was running for president at the time that Trump was running his first time. And Trump said a lot of really terrible things about Jeb Bush, and they've never really gotten over that. Again, sometimes Trump says and does things that hurts people's feelings, and they have a really hard time moving on from that. Just remember Romney. He's had a really hard time moving on from some of the hurtful things that Trump had said about him. Now, keep in mind, I don't agree with Trump being rude. I don't. I think that's ridiculous. I think that's one of Trump's biggest flaws, is that he needs to learn how to work with people in a way that they would want to endorse him later. But he doesn't. Anyway, backing up, Trump has this fundraiser, and he does it alone. He doesn't have ex-presidents standing there with him. He does it completely alone and raises twice what Biden raised in one night, as well as raise more money than any president candidate in the history of our country in one fundraiser. So that says a lot. That sure shut up the liberals, because remember, they were sitting there saying, oh, Donald Trump, he can't raise money, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yes, he can. Yes, he can. And keep in mind, all of that money goes to him running, and it's real money. It goes really to him running because he doesn't have to pay his supporters. And Democrats, they have to pay their supporters. They don't have organic supporters like Trump does. It scares them to death, as it should, because if you were going into a candidacy for president, if you were going into an election, you would be really worried about the fact that your opponent has supporters without having to pay them, has organic support, grassroots type stuff. That's the stuff that scares you. Whereas Democrats, nobody really supports Joe Biden. The comments that we have on social media, the videos that we get, it's all paid. They have to. There's no possible way to get that much support for Joe Biden. He's a mess. He can't finish a speech, yet for some reason, people thinks he's able to finish a speech. He can't. Anyway, So Trump raises all of that, doubling that of Biden's fundraising. That's just amazing to me. This is on top of the fact that Trump has a lot of legal issues. He does. He has a trial set to start next week where they're going to look into whether or not he broke the law in falsifying a whole bunch of corporate documents, as well as paying hush money to a prostitute. Okay, this is really bad. Now, keep in mind, this is actually one of those things that I'm a little bit hung up on. We know that he was with a prostitute. I don't agree with that. But keep in mind also the fact that he was, not anymore, but he was a billionaire. If you're going to judge people by the company they keep, especially as billionaires, then you must hate every one of them because they all do this. Now, most of them keep it quiet, and had Trump not been running for president, all of his escapades would have been kept quiet also. But it wasn't. Everything was brought to light because he ran for president. Imagine Jeff Bezos stepping up to run for president. There would be a lot. Well, if he ran as a Democrat, all of his secrets would be kept. But if he ran as a Republican, everything he's ever done or ever said would be brought to light. And I don't know Jeff Bezos very well, but I would imagine, it's of my opinion, that you would find some of the same stupid crap. But again, that's past life stuff. Now, if Trump actually did pay off this prostitute so that she wouldn't speak and wouldn't talk about what had happened, well, I will agree with you that is bad. I don't agree with prostitution at all, and so I can't condone any of his actions. But keep in mind, I would rather still, even with this, if he's found guilty and in prison, I would still rather vote for him than Biden. Now, that's not to say if things go south and he is actually found guilty of some of these crimes, then even I would rethink whether or not I would write in a candidate. Obviously, right now he's not guilty. He's innocent right now. In my mind, he's innocent of everything he's been accused of, because that's a right that we're afforded as American citizens. Innocent until we're proven guilty. I know that's not how the liberals see it. If in the liberals' mind, if you're a Republican or if you're a MAGA extremist, they think that's such a bad thing. It's not. And MAGA just stands for, oh yeah, I'll tell you this. Let me go back to this in just a second. But if you're a MAGA extremist, then you're guilty until they can just figure out how. You're constantly guilty. They just need to find it. And they'll dig and dig until they find it. It's actually illegal to do, but for some reason they're able to get away with it. I don't understand it myself, but they're able to get away with it. Going back to what I was saying, my mother is liberal. On most days, she's not a true liberal. She just hates Trump so bad. And so she'll vote for anything that's not Trump. And obviously I don't fault her for it. I love her to death. But, and by no means, politics doesn't play a role in how I feel about people. I still love people. I'm not going to hate you just because you're a liberal. We disagree, but disagreement is not hate. Remember, this program is about logic. And logically, we have to recognize that disagreement does not equal hate. That they do not equate. So keep that in mind. Anyway, my mother's a liberal. She said she just hates Trump so much that she's never going to vote for him. She has these ideas in her mind about what Trump has done in his past that are unforgivable. Some of the things that he's done, we know of. Some of the things that he has said, because we have it on recording, and I agree that it's bad. I don't like some of the things that he said, but some of the things that he's accused of doing, remember, he's innocent of, unless you can prove it guilty in a court of law. But my mother hates Trump so much that doesn't really matter. He's just guilty. He's guilty, and she will never vote for him, ever. And even if I logically point out the truth and it is right in front of her, she'll never believe it. She never wants to talk about it. That's how a lot of liberals are. Some conservatives even. They hate Trump so bad that even if you were to point them to the truth, they refuse to see it. They just want him to be guilty. And they need him to be guilty. In their own minds, they need him to be guilty. I don't understand it myself, but it is real. So even if he was acquitted of all the charges that he has, they still would say, well, he must have cheated it somehow, or he must have gotten it off somehow by cheating. This is how liberals think. There's always something wrong. There has to be something. The idea that he just didn't do it and that it's a lie, that's not an idea that they're willing to entertain. Anyway, if Trump was found guilty of some of these crimes, then I will be there to announce his guilt. I'm not going to try to hide it. I'm not going to try to say, oh, no. There's got to be something wrong. I will see it. Now, in the fraud case in New York, that's not necessarily the case. That's a civil trial, so it's going to be a little bit different. I'm talking about jury trials, where criminal trials, not civil. Okay? Remember, civil and criminal trials are much different. A civil trial can have very different outcomes than a criminal trial. I just look at O.J. Simpson. He was found not guilty or acquitted and found not guilty on all charges of everything that he was accused of in his criminal trials, but found liable in his civil trials. So remember that civil and criminal are two completely different things. So some of his civil trials, I don't really care. Like, if Ngoran wants to Judge Ngoran and Letitia James wants to give him make him pay $500 million, that's a lot of that's political to me. That's something because it's civil. And he's having to pay for very stupid things. But now paying hush money to a prostitute and being found guilty for that criminally, that's different. So if he is found guilty, well, you know what? I'll be right there to tell you he's guilty. And I'll be right there. I'll be sitting right here to announce it. I'll be talking into this microphone to announce the fact that he was found guilty and that I may rethink who I'm going to vote for. But right now, he's innocent in my mind until we can prove otherwise. Now, I like Trump, but I don't like some of the things he's said and done. Now, I've talked about this in the past. I do, however, see something different with Trump than I used to. Remember, billionaires do stupid crap all the time. They all do. Zuckerberg, Musk, Bezos, they're oh, jeez. What's his name? Bill Gates. They all do stupid crap when it comes to women and all of this. I think. I'm not saying this for sure. I'm under the impression it is of my opinion, things like that. Allegedly. I think they do stupid crap, all of them. But again, I don't know what it's like to be a billionaire, so who knows? But what I see with Trump is a man who lived a billionaire lifestyle in the past who has been trying to do better now. Maybe not necessarily about his being rude to people and making fun of people, but I do see a man who has been fighting for redemption from some of his past problems that he's had. And keep in mind also, if you're going to judge him by whether or not he had a prostitute decades ago or a decade ago or whatever it was, then you need to judge pretty much every politician, because come on, that's what politics is women and all of this, everything that comes along with it. That's what politics is. That's why some of them go into politics. So again, you can't judge Trump for something that a lot of other politicians that you do support have done the exact same stupid crap. It's just that they don't get caught. Anyway, a lot of that is theory. A lot of that is speculation. I hate theory and speculation. It's not logical. But occasionally, I like to share my feelings, even though that is not what this show is about. This show is about logic. And if you were to look at Trump's legal issues right now, logically, he is innocent on all accounts until he's proven guilty in a court of law. Now, speaking of court, it was kind of funny. Trump's lawyers made a mistake. They subpoenaed a guy. I can't remember his name, but they subpoenaed a guy and they subpoenaed the wrong person. It was a very odd name, but they subpoenaed a guy with the exact same name, and the guy didn't even know what he was doing. And so Trump's lawyers were like, "Oh, hey, he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing." Well, that's because he's the wrong person. That's an honest mistake. But the trans comedian Stephen Colbert was making fun of Trump's lawyers for this on late night television. And remember, Stephen Colbert, he's probably a nice guy. I don't know. I've never met him in public or in person, but he's probably a pretty nice guy. But remember, he is a trans comedian. That means he's a very unfunny man who self-identifies as a comedian. So let him have his day. He's a hero. Anyway, so Stephen Colbert, the trans comedian, he was making fun of this and saying, Trump's lawyers subpoenaed the wrong guy. Again, let me give you a little word of advice. These are the kinds of things that when you report, it's not going to change anyone's mind. No one's going to say, I'm not going to vote for Trump anymore because his lawyer subpoenaed a guy with the exact same name and it wasn't the right guy. So I'm no longer going to vote for Trump. But at the same time, you're not going to change any of the minds of the people who are already not wanting to vote for him. So the only thing, something like this, making fun of his lawyers for an honest mistake like this, the only thing you're doing is you're giving Trump a stage. You're giving him airtime, free marketing. You see, the media ignores everything about Biden. Again, going back to how much it costs to run for president, of whether or not you're a Democrat or Republican, the cost is so much different. a Republican, Trump gets free media and free marketing because he's on the news all the time. Whereas they try to suppress Biden's stories, and eventually Biden has to pay for his own airtime. It costs a lot more to run as a Democrat. Anyway, so they were making fun of this. That's what we get with the court of law. Everybody's so sensitive, but his lawyers are working hard. Trump's in a lot of different cases right now, some criminal, some civil. Whatever the case, he's in a lot of different cases right now, and it's incredible that his lawyers are even able to keep it together as much as they are, and they're actually doing a good job. I wonder if he has a different legal team. I don't know this. I'm actually wondering for real. Does he have a different legal team for each of the cases, or is it the same legal team that's trying to juggle between them? I'm not sure. Whatever the case, it's a whole bunch of lawyers that are making a ton of money off Trump. So, and yes, I have read a little bit. Now, I don't have any proof of this. I have read that some of Trump's campaign money has gone to pay for his legal bills. I read this, but I haven't verified it, so I don't know if it's actually true. But I don't know how I feel about that, because on the one hand, I don't want his campaign money that was donated by hardworking Americans to go toward his legal fees. But at the same time, some of his legal fees are so ridiculous and his legal challenges are so ridiculous that somebody needs to step in and help. Eventually, I think all of us need to stop all of this garbage and just say, hey, we're done. We're done. You have had 9 years to try to convict Trump of something. You have failed to do so. You're done. Eventually, we're going to have to stand up and say that, because I don't know. I will say this. If I was to run for president right now, let's say by some miracle, Trump was found guilty and sent to jail or sent to prison. And let's say I ran for president. And let's say hypothetically I win and I'm now the president of the United States. Here's what my first day would be like. I would go to my inauguration. I would stand in the cold. I wish they did that in the summer. It always looks so cold. Bernie Sanders, remember? All bundled up. That became a funny meme. It always looks so cold. Why don't they got to figure a better time to do that. But I would go through my inauguration. I'd be sworn in. I would then leave the U.S. Capitol. I would arrive at the White House. I would go into my Oval Office. I would sit down and I would pardon Trump of all charges. That's what I would do. He would be out of jail within minutes after my swearing in. If I was president, if Trump was found guilty somehow, sent to jail or whatever, or going to be sent to jail, he would be a free man within minutes of my swearing in, if I was, by some weird miracle, became president of the United States. And on that terrifying note, I will leave you there. I am American Mike. This is The Logic Dilemma, the show where we discuss logic. Not emotion, logic. Stay logical, America.